What's going on, everybody? It's your boy JRich back for another episode of Across the Pod with my main man Tom. Game week 20 is upon us. We were off for a couple of game weeks because of the Christmas break and the New Year's break. So happy New Year to everybody. I hope your teams are still in good shape. Tom, I told you before the show, man, I don't know what it is about this new year, new me, new team. I almost want to wild card it, but you told me just pump the brakes. There's lots of things we have to figure out, some questions you have for me, and some transfer we have to make. We have a lot of players suspended this week with Timber, Morgan Rogers, Cunha. Bowen is out till February. Duran is suspended after his antics after the Newcastle game. And Saka is out till March. Luckily for us, we transferred him out before we got hurt. But how are you doing, my friend? How is your Christmas? How is your New Year? And how are you feeling heading into Game Week 20?
Yeah, it's lovely to be back. Feels weird recording again after a little break, but it was a nice chance to recharge and take a step back from FPL. I think my only New Year's resolution is just to continue captaining Salah, because that seems to be where our only points are coming from every week, and we get a green arrow just because we captain Salah. So we'll probably carry on with that. But yeah, I'm keen to get chatting again. I think, like you said, let's talk through some fixtures, which players to target. I don't think we necessarily need to wildcard yet, but I think we'll talk through some of the players which, if you're looking to do that, then we kind of know which ones to look into. So yeah, excited to get into today's episode.
Yeah, it's a lot to figure out. We did make some transfers, and we can talk about that when we get into the team. But we always have to start with your notes heading into Game Week 20. So let's pull those up and talk through with me what you're looking at for this game week.
Yeah, so I think the key things are there's some really big matchups this week, which, coming off the back of last week, you kind of want to keep the momentum on. The main ones which I think I want to discuss were the first one being Liverpool. 2.75 expected goals against Man United. You saw how bad Man United were against Newcastle. Yeah. I don't expect them to do anything differently, and I expect Liverpool. I saw something on Twitter saying expected like 27-0 or something. But I think with 3 goals, I think this is the highest scoring other than Man City, and I think it's a split choice this week between if you have Haaland still for whatever reason, between him and Salah. And I just wouldn't back against Salah at the minute with the form that he's in, the form Liverpool's in. Looks like it's just so easy for them scoring goals, and every time they attack down the right-hand side, looks like they're going to score. So I think in that picture are the 3, if I was on wildcard, they're the 3 Liverpool assets I'd want. I'd want Mo Salah. Yep. I'd want Trent, and I'd probably want Luis Diaz, because I think he's continuing to, get form back. His minutes are getting a little bit better. There's the issue is with Liverpool is they kind of rotate Nunez, Gakpo, Luis Diaz for 2 spots, and Jota. So it's kind of like, which 2 do you want from there? And to be honest, with just the way Liverpool play, if they're getting 30 minutes and then 90 minutes and then 90 minutes, 30 minutes, they're still outscoring other midfielders in FPL. So I don't hate just having whichever player that you think is best out of those ones. I've lent Luis Diaz over Gakpo, just given that the midfielders tend to score higher clean sheet points, extra point for assists and goals. So I'd probably go Luis Diaz as my third one. Obviously, Trent, again, had a really good game. I don't know whether he's worth the amount. If you don't have him, I'm personally not going to chase him. But I think if you've got him in your team, a really good extra asset for Liverpool. The only other fixture which I think is as high scoring is Man City. I've only flagged Haaland there because I just think the way Man City are playing, I don't want Foden, I don't want De Bruyne with less minutes. The only one is Haaland. And if you don't have him, I don't think it's the end of the world given how badly they're playing. But I think off the back of a 2-0 win, West Ham at home, who just conceded 5, I think Haaland is probably the other best asset other than Salah this game week. Fulham's an interesting one because I know they've got a really good run of fixtures. And a lot of people looking at that third striker spot and I saw a lot of people transferring Raul Jimenez, and then the other player in that photo is obviously Robinson. I think for me, I've got Castagne at right back because Tete got injured, and he's only 4.2 million. And we had a conversation before about how some of the cheap defenders at the start of the game that were 4.5 million, you mentioned Aina, mentioned Robinson, they're kind of like 5 million plus now, and they're just not worth that. So I think for the third defender spot, I'd quite like the Castagne for the short term at 4.2 million for Fulham. And I think the last fixture I want to talk about was Aston Villa. 2.5 expected goals this week. With Duran out and Watkins coming off the back of a goal and an assist, and having Leicester at home, I think Watkins is a really good shout for the next few game weeks. I also like Matty Cash as just an option as he's back from suspension now. Only 4.4 mil and in a good defence playing Leicester at home. 42% clean sheet potential is the best this week alongside Liverpool. A good option if you're trying to pivot off someone who's... I think there's quite a lot of people who are suspended this week, Timber and a few others. So if you want to do a change, I think Matty Cash is a good option.
Yeah, defense right. Timber is going to be out this week. A lot of guys in the midfield as well with Cunha. Cunha's going to be out at forward, right? You have Duran who's suspended as well. I talked about Rodgers. He's a big one for a lot of people. He's like 23% owned coming off another big week. We were lucky. I did bring him in before the week. So, but I did want to ask you about Villa, right? Because Villa, I think it's easy to look at a Jackson because a lot of people are kind of transferring out Jackson right now after he had another bad week and was subbed off fairly early. But do you think that Watkins can thrive without Rodgers in the lineup, and then they'll have to use either Digne or Cash to kind of go down the wing and still perform? Because I think part of the issue will be, is McGinn going to be enough, or would you even consider bringing in a player for the short term that can play with Watkins while these guys are out? Because they're going to be out this week, and then the fixtures get a little bit tougher. But would you bring anybody in this week outside of Watkins to potentially double up on Villa assets?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Watkins is doing so well because of Rodgers, like ball carrying up the pitch.
Yeah, they went back and forth on both goals.
Like they played really well. And it is an interesting one. I hadn't really thought about it. With Rodgers being out, it does have the question of whether Villa are going to play as well. I do still think that they will probably just overpower Leicester, but maybe it's not as prolific as we're expecting. Maybe it will be like 1-0, 2-0. And then I think we had a quick look at Villa fixtures before the podcast. I think there's some okay ones. They're playing Arsenal as well somewhere in there, so not quite too sure.
Yeah, so they got Leicester, right? Everton, Arsenal, West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich. It's not terrible, but right. So that's where it's interesting, right? You talk about Watkins scored off of a Rodgers penalty kick that he earned, and then the goal that Rodgers scored was the Ollie Watkins assist. So it's like they're playing off of each other. And it's, can they still continue to do it when one of them is out? Rodgers is kind of the main guy there, especially bringing it up the pitch. And I don't know if you watched the game, but man, Ollie Watkins, there was a reason he subbed off in the 60th minute for Duran, because he was gassed by the end of that game. So I think it's just interesting that, is he going to be at full form? He's 8.8 more than Jackson. I don't think he's more than Isak now, because Isak continues to rise. But interesting to think that they are expected this many goals, considering they are a little bit undermanned, especially offensively. But I'm with you. I still like Watkins as an option, and he's obviously going to be on pens like he was this past week.
Yeah, that's a good shout, actually. So I think if you have Watkins, great. I think if you don't have Watkins, I'd probably go against it then, given that there's a really good fixture this week, but without Rodgers, question marks. Then you've got Everton away and Arsenal away, two very tough fixtures, by which time Duran is then back, and they're probably playing Champions League fixtures, more questions about rotation. So I think the Watkins bandwagon's probably gone. And
it could be short-lived,
Yeah, so I think beyond this week, probably not looking to bring in Villa assets. So yeah, that's an interesting one to consider then. Any other fixtures on there which you think's worth targeting? Any players from those teams which you think I might have missed? The three I highlighted for Newcastle is just Lewis Hall, because he's just been so good. I think 4 clean sheets out of the last 5, you said. Unbelievable. Lewis Hall, you call him, right?
Lewis Hall. You know it, bro. Yeah. He's been playing great, though. He's been playing he's getting attacking returns beyond the clean sheets. I know you have Gordon here, and I even thought, would you ever consider Murphy over Gordon? I know it sounds crazy, but Murphy has been actually playing, which is a big surprise, and he's only 5.1 mil right now. Again, more of a budget guy. Maybe if you want to pivot from Ahmad, that's a conversation we may have a little bit later, but that's the only thing that I think you should consider as far as Gordon. Isak, if he's on your team, I don't know what you're doing for the past 6 game weeks when he's returned every single game, but he has to be in the team for sure. Lewis Hall is a staple. You said it the very first pod. You said Lewis Hall you think could be great this year. Took him a little bit, got demolished by Salah, but that's over now, and he's been great. But I think you've highlighted the key 3 here. Murphy would be the only one I might consider if you're looking a little bit cheaper. But I like Matty Cash. I like Ollie Watkins if it's for a 1-week thing. The only team I wanted to bring up was Palace. And would you ever consider bringing in a Palace asset this week? It's a little premature, but after this week against Chelsea, their fixtures get really, really good. A lot of people were looking at potentially bringing in Eze, who did score in a pretty nice goal this past week. And then Munoz is the big one in defense because he's not 5 mil. He's like 4.7 mil right now. And I believe he's probably behind Lewis Hall now in terms of returns at defense, but he's up there in terms of goal involvements. But would you ever consider bringing in any Palace assets now, because Chelsea isn't playing very well, and maybe they do actually get a few goals against Chelsea this week?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I just think Eze has just so underperformed his data this season. Compared to last season, he was like one of the top mids, especially towards the end when Palace clicked. I think Palace are playing a little bit better now. Some people chose to bring in Mateta, which I just didn't see the value in, but he's around that level of tenure.
And Sarr's the other one too, people like a lot.
Yeah, and I love Sarr, but I just think he had 2 hauls, like 13 points, but in between that, it was like 3 point, 3 point, 2 point, 3 point, and I just don't see value in that. You're kind of chasing points at that stage. The one that I do like is Munoz. I think he's going to be unbelievable. Like his goal attacking threat. If you see his heat map, he spends so much time in the opposition box. Like he's always there, arriving late. He's scored 1 this season or 2, and he's like with that run of fixtures, with the clean sheet potential and goal involvement, like he has been, probably the best defender outside of Lewis Hall at that price point for getting output beyond a clean sheet. And with fixtures, I think that's a really good option. So I'd probably only consider Munoz, which I think is good because he's cheaper than the rest of like Robinson, Aeno, and other ones at that level. And then Eze is quite a nice punt as just to be differential, right? Like he was in all of the top content creators teams at game week 1, and that is for a reason. And if they're starting to click at 6.6 mil, is actually like a really, really good price point. With those fixtures, I actually don't mind bringing in Eze. It's not a bad option, actually.
It's just hard because Sarr is only 5'9" right now, right? So that's the biggest issue, is that he's kind of playing a little bit better. You talked about his form and what he's been doing, but it's been a couple of weeks. And even like this past week in Southampton, he didn't get it done, but the fixtures do look great. And I think depending on how your funds look, because everything's changed since Saka got hurt. It was very template. It was Salah, it was Palmer, it was Saka, and everyone's team. Yeah. Now everyone has 10.6 mil to move around, and the defenders are going up in price. Some of the budget forwards are going up in price. Budget midfielders are going up in price. But Eze is probably a player that's not going to move a lot. And while he is 6.6 for now, that's probably because people have had him in their team from the beginning, and his ownership is probably significantly lower than that overall.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think he is worth extra to Sarr, given he's like Palace's best player. He's on penalties, he's on free kicks, so set pieces. So I think I would go Eze over Sarr personally.
Okay. I like it.
There we go. The only other team which I thought was just, we talked about Newcastle so much. They got 5 wins on the bounce, 4 clean sheets out of 5. Gordon, Hall, Isak. I love that triple up, especially, I don't know if you can pull up their fixtures, but for the next few, it's like Spurs away is actually a really good attacking fixture.
It's not bad. All their defenders are hurt, so it's not an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And we tend to do pretty well against Spurs. Wolves at home, great fixture. Bournemouth at home, great fixture. Southampton away, good fixture. Fulham at home, great fixture. I think we'll turn up at City as well, ready to get something out of it. And I think Forest at home, and then also a great fixture. So I think for the next 7 game weeks, I think Newcastle have the best fixtures, and I'm desperate to get a triple up. I've got Isak and Hall, and I'm looking to bring in Gordon this week. So I think it's just coming off the back of that 5 wins, now in like 5th place with momentum, those fixtures, team looking very sharp again. That's kind of like where my head's at on the Newcastle triple up.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's the way to go. And it's funny because I've been playing Dubravka every week ever since we got Rye out of the team and I started making some moves. We had Fabianski get hurt. So that kind of was unfortunate for a lot of people, but Dubravka came in and another clean sheet. What's hilarious is that he's got 4 clean sheets, and I believe he only has 3 saves over that time span, which is hilarious, but continues to get it done. So I might as well keep him in there at 4.2, but I'm definitely with you. If I was tripling up, it would be Hall, it would be Gordon, it would be Isak going forward.
But a great shout on Dubravka. I think he's actually played really well, and Newcastle look more settled at the back, having him as an outlet to play out from, because Nick Pope has 2 left feet and likes to kick it straight into touch, so he's just absolutely dreadful. I think the defense looks way more confident with Dubravka in at the minute. So a few things I wanted to ask you, because it's questions selfishly for my own team, but also what I've been seeing on FPL Twitter, is what do you think your top 3 players are for under 8 million? I'm seeing a lot of people, like you say, they've got the Saka money. You've got players which are kind of hurt or not performing at that price point, and you're trying to switch to someone. We've obviously mentioned Gordon as being one of them at 7.4. But if you're to have a quick look and see across that board, what you think of just a few which you'd be targeting, they're either in your team already or you're looking to get.
Do you have any positions in mind? Because right now, when I look at it,
Only midfielders. Sorry, that's what I was.
only
gonna say.
midfielders. Okay.
Yeah.
So one player
midfield.
I'm very intrigued by is Kulusevski. And I feel like he's a player that would be a bit of a differential right now. I still like Gordon. Bowen would have probably been there if he wasn't hurt right now. Luis Diaz is definitely in there the way that he's playing. We talked about Diaz versus Gakpo early on in the year. Now it's changed, and Gakpo is the one playing striker, allowing Diaz to play on the left side, or they just flip-flop in terms of that positioning. But I still think Mbuemo is another one that you just have to consider having in the team. He's only 7-7 right now. It's not even his highest price of the year. Scored against Arsenal. Playing really, really great right now. It's just picking those three. I think it would probably be Gordon, Diaz, and Mbuemo. I still think it's probably where you'd want to go. I do like Kulusevski, though, only because Tottenham has to score like 3 goals a game to even be in it. And he's probably been their most consistent player, both in terms of attacking threat and playing every game. It should be Maddison because of the way that Maddison's been playing, but he's so inconsistent in terms of his minutes that Kulusevski is actually probably the more consistent asset. At 6.4, I think he's a good budget guy if you are looking for a player like that, but it'd probably be Mbuemo, Diaz, and Gordon as it stands right now for my top 3 under 8 mil at midfield.
Yeah, that's really funny because they were actually my top 3, which is so I'm glad that's matched. The interesting one is Kulusevski, who seems undroppable for Spurs. He either plays centrally when they drop Maddison or they drop Brennan Johnson and he plays on the right. And I think if you speak to any Spurs fan, it seems like he is probably one of their best players. Like technically does a lot for the team. I think when they play Maddison, they struggle defensively a little bit more. And you see Ange getting a little bit frustrated with him. And I think he's going to go with a more solid team rather than, I think Kulusevski will start against Newcastle on Saturday. So I think it'll be a really interesting one. And I do like him as a differential. Spurs just seem to score goals and Kulusevski has been doing really well. So I like that as a differential. But I guess that comes on to my next question, which is my planned transfers this week. Do you think that's worth it? And the 2 out of the 3 that we talked about, Gordon and Luis Diaz, for me, it was between Luis. I was definitely bringing in Gordon. And then for me, it was between Luis Diaz and Mbuemo, which was a really tough call, but I've erred on the side of Luis Diaz. So do you think that's worthwhile transfers get? Because I just think Ahmad is underperforming. Man United, like, they had the really good games, but Man United since have looked absolutely dreadful. And I think I can see Amorim reverting back to having Ahmad at right wing back, because I think he did such a good job there. And playing someone else in the 10 role. I just don't. And they got Liverpool away. I think maybe just take the profit on Ahmad. Like, he's gone up a lot, and I also had Son this week. He was absolutely dreadful, missed a penalty. So I'm just ready just to rage him out of my team. But it gets me Gordon and Diaz, just, So that's kind of where my head's at. Do you think that's worth it? Anyone else I should be considering for that price point?
No, I think you have a great transfer plan here. If you want to go on Mbuemo, I don't hate it, but I still like Gordon. He's been playing so well recently, and the way that Newcastle's playing, you should be looking to have multiple assets. Obviously, you already have Isak, Hall. Gordon would be the third. Diaz, as we kind of talked about, seems to be nailed in the team for a more considerable portion of the year than he was previously, and him and Gakpo are not rotating as much. Now we'll see what happens with the Champions League games kind of ramp up again, but I'm all for Diaz at 7-6. I think it's a good pivot right now, and Ahmad is a player that I wanted out of our team last week, but I wasn't able to make it work with the transfers, but I already took him out of my team already for Rodgers last week, because I don't see it right now with United. They had their little manager bounce, they beat City, Ahmad scored a great goal, but especially with Bruno out and then Eriksen and Casemiro, it's just a disaster right now for United. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about, since we're kind of here talking United and other players, how much do you think the January transfer window is going to change things for FPL? Like, would you be saving transfers a little bit when you can to potentially bring in players or players that are transferred out? Because there will be a decent amount of movement, it seems, as it stands right now, especially potentially at United. But I was wondering your thoughts on that quickly, because it's just kind of on top of my mind talking about the January transfer window.
Yeah, I think it's always an interesting one. Even like summer transfers, January transfers, and a lesson people don't learn every year is just bring them in expecting them to play straight away as soon as they signed. And typically managers tend to like ease them in. So I think don't save transfers for it. Even if players like Man United make a great new signing, I wouldn't play them from the outset, just to see how they settle in. Do they play well in the system? Are they playing well? You can then have 1 or 2 game weeks worth of data to be like, okay, great, they're bringing him in, rather than bringing them in, they don't play, they come off the bench, and then they come play the next game, but then they're not playing well, and you've had 2 shit game weeks, and then you wasted transfer to get them in and out. So I just don't think it's worth, unless it's like they're bringing in Mbappe or something. Yeah, your Gyökeres, and it's like a problem. Then maybe
Amarin's going to throw him right at the top, and he's going to be banging in goals from week 1 probably.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's a discussion to be had, but I just don't think you'd be saving transfers for it at the minute.
All right, but I like your moves though. I would 100% make these. I co-sign them for sure.
Great. Last thing I want to talk about was captaincy. We obviously didn't do a pod at Christmas, but I did tweet out Christmas or no pod, basically just Captain Salah, okay? And if you just followed us and listened to that, we didn't even need to do a video. It was literally the story of last game week, just Captain Salah. So the 28 people that viewed this, and we got 1 like, so fuck you guys. But I think this, and it's a question for you, is it same again this week? Are we just silly to go against Salah? The only other player that I'm tempted to captain is Haaland against West Ham, but it's just I feel so nervous not captaining Salah after he's already on 200 points, and I think his best most people get that the top scorers in FPL over a season's 200. So are we silly to go against Salah?
I think so. I think we would be absolute knobs to not just captain Salah this week. I was an idiot, Tom. I captained Palmer last week, and, well, I think we all know how that turned out. And it seems like when we do the pod, we say, you know what, let's just take Salah and roll with it. And then with our own teams, that's when we got to make up some spots. We got to, be a bit more differential. And that's when things go wrong because United's playing terrible. We know that. While West Ham is playing bad as well, there's no way we can say with confidence we believe more in Man City to score 3 goals than Liverpool right now. Liverpool's scoring 3 goals a game. They're unreal on the counterattack. Salah's playing out of his mind, making 2 players just to get an assist to Gakpo. There's no reason not to captain him. It's annoying for FPL because it makes it so much harder to kind of gain on people when it's so template to just captain Salah every week. But if you're truly trying to gain places and move up the board, you have to find other ways to get your points, whether it's in defense, whether it's in the midfield. But not captaining Salah, I don't think it's going to be the way to do it. I still may go against it from time to time. But if you're trying to just build and stack points, captaining Salah is absolutely the way to go.
Oh, that was easy enough. Yeah, I mean, in my own head, I'm like, how am I going to get more points to be differential? But Salah's the best player in the league at the minute, playing for the best team at the minute. Man United look dreadful at the minute. It kind of, why would you go against it? I might, for my own personal team, go Haaland just to try and be a little bit different. But I just think for our team, we've been playing it safe and it's worked every week for the last few weeks. And even if the rest of your team's underperforming, it's just kind of bailing people out and we're still getting green arrows every week. So we may as well just keep doing it with Salah.
Yeah, no, I'm with it for sure. I'm with it. So, Tom, here is the team. For anyone who did miss the past few weeks because there was no shows, we did bring in Rodgers. We did bring in Dubravka. I almost made a switch for Aït-Nouri, so thankfully we didn't do that. Now he was on the bench this week, but he still did return and is playing well, so we might as well keep him. But what do you see as far as what we should do, Tom? Because we do only have 0.1 mil. We have 1 free transfer. I've been really considering taking a hit this week. We have to do something with Morgan Rodgers, or we could potentially start 4 defenders if we wanted to. Again, it's not necessarily what I want to do, but we do have Aït-Nouri at Forest, which could be a decent game. We obviously have Lewis Hall. We have Caldwell, who's been dreadful, and we have Digne, who's playing against Leicester. So we did want to start 4 and roll the transfer. It's not terrible because Rodgers will be back next week. We obviously have Palmer, we have Salah, and if we really want to keep Ahmad, we can do that as well. Jackson, Haaland, Isak up top. What do you see when you look at this team right now?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because that Rodgers fixture at home to Leicester would have been absolutely perfect and we'd be laughing. But
that's why I brought him
in. I really want to get Ahmad out of my personal team. I just don't think he's worth it at the minute. But I'd even be tempted to go Jacob Murphy. Ahmad to Jacob Murphy, and we triple up on Newcastle that way.
We can't even because we have Dubravka. That's the problem, right? Is so the 2 players that I would target in that range would be Enzo, who I think is just a good value at 5.1, and I still think that while Chelsea's playing poorly right now, it's just he has a better shot of returning than Ahmad probably does against Liverpool, and Jacob Murphy, just because they're playing against Tottenham and Tottenham's defense is completely depleted right now. But outside of those 2 players, that's when it becomes more difficult because I don't even know who we would look at
no one really
down in that 5-1 range.
How much is Iwobi? Is he too much at the minute? Is he in the 6 million?
Oh, Iwobi's like, he's I think 5'9" still. Yeah, he's expensive. Yeah. He's expensive.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because also I think we'd want to get rid of Jackson. Do we? Like Chelsea's fixtures their fixtures look so good though, and is it like, are we just being reactive? But is his minutes a question?
So he came on in the middle of the game against Ipswich because they were down 2-0. He wasn't going to play because they played two. He hasn't yet played both games of a game week when they do have two in a singular week. So that kind of made sense. I did expect that. Now we were hoping he stayed on the bench and they would win the game, but that obviously wasn't the case. But I don't think the fixtures are terrible. Like if you keep rolling with him, it's fine.
Yeah.
They have a lot of home games, which is good, and some light fixtures. Even the City away fixture. Am I really worried about City away? Not really, as it stands right now. West Ham home, Wolves home, Bournemouth home, Palace away isn't really a bad fixture at all. So I think it's fine if you want to roll with him, but a lot of people are making that pivot down to, a Chris Wood is pretty popular. Cunha, even though he's banned, he could be a guy who rises going into next game week. Strand Larson potentially with Cunha out. Watkins, of course, we talked about him. Wisa is another player that's going up a little bit. At 8 mil, it's tough with Jackson. And then I think the problem for us is we'd have to take a hit to move Jackson and then, move Ahmad as well and kind of rebalance out our funds.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. Because if we say we put in Wood, for instance, at 6-7, what could we put Ahmad up to? Like, how much would that give us?
It's a 6-9, which is actually not too bad.
It's not too bad, but it's also not like we spoke about Gordon 7-4, Luis Diaz 7-6, Martinelli.
Yeah. We could bring in Martinelli.
Is not a bad shout. And then we got like two players that are playing. I think.
Yeah. He's been all right. He's got 2 goals in the last 3 games, which is pretty solid.
Yeah, I was chatting to Lewis earlier, and he was saying Martinelli's playing himself into form, which I do kind of agree with. And Saka out, like he's having to step up. And I think Arsenal, a pretty convincing 3-1 win. Tough fixture against Brighton, then they've got Spurs, Villa as well. Like I don't think the fixtures are fantastic for Arsenal, but I do expect them to win most of the games and score at least 2 goals. So I do quite like Martinelli at that price point, and it's a player that we haven't spoken about yet. So I guess also we have enough for Kulusevski, who we spoke about. So it's kind of like, do we want Wood and just keep him and go for a Kulusevski or a Martinelli, and then we have the option to then in future rotate Rodgers with whoever has the worst fixture out of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you just look at the returns for Kulusevski. He's got 3 goals in the last 5 and an assist baked in there as well. Of course, they're losing every game, so he's never going to get the clean sheet bonus, but they have to score goals to simply stay in games at all. The issue for him, I think it seems like he never gets any bonus points, which is kind of ridiculous, but I guess they're just conceding too many goals for the Tottenham players on the other side to get the bonus points. Unfortunately, but the fixtures are pretty solid. It's interesting. Would you even want to go lower? Like, would you ever consider maybe going down to like Raul Jimenez because he's so cheap, and then we could maybe go even higher? That would give us 8.1 actually, so we could bring in an Mbuemo if we wanted to. A Luis Diaz. I just think the potential return and upside could be there. Now, Raul is tough because he does get subbed off for Munoz a lot, and he's not playing more than like 70 minutes a game. But outside of that, I think when you look at the 2 options, you have Wood and I guess Kulusevski is solid, though. Would you rather have Wood and Kulusevski, or would you rather have like Raul Jimenez and Luis Diaz? Because at least you get the high-end upside of Luis Diaz and Salah together.
The only thing for me, and I think that, like, it's the ethos of this team, is like we've gone safer, right, and it's paid out. With Raul and Luis Diaz, there's probably more upside, but I can see, like, when Raul stopped scoring, he's being subbed off 60 minutes, and Munoz looking close to starting because Munoz has scored a couple of goals for them.
Yeah.
I just think we probably want a 90-minute man in Chris Wood, and we probably want someone like Martinelli or Kulusevski who's going to play every game. Because if there's a week where Luis Diaz is benched and Raul's benched, we're instantly like 2 players down. So
yeah.
But I do like the risk. If you're more inclined to do that, then I'm also happy to do so.
I'll think about it. It's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
If you click pick team now, like how's the rest of the team lining up for this week?
It's not terrible because we could go. like right now, right? We have Rodgers still in there, but we could always just swap and just go with 4 defense. And it would save us the transfer. We wouldn't have to take the hit, and we can kind of see what happens through this game week because Rodgers is going to be back, right? Like he's going to be back. And at that point, we have 11 players we could play any week. Now, Ahmad, again, we kind of want him gone, but we could transfer him out. And we kind of give Jackson another week against Palace where the fixtures, again, not great. It's just Chelsea's not playing overly well. Whether they're tired, it's hard to say, but they're just not playing very well like we saw late November, early December. They've dropped off a lot, but hopefully last week was a big wake-up call for them. I think the funny thing is you look back to Liverpool, right? They haven't lost since they played Forest. And they lost 1-0. And they've been flying ever since. Now, Liverpool's a different caliber team than Chelsea, but hopefully this can be a wake-up call for Chelsea to say, look, if we want to really have a shot at Champions League next season and finishing in the top 4, they have to play much better. And I think it was a bit of a wake-up call to lose that game 2-0 to Ipswich.
Yeah. I'm kind of leaning towards not taking a hit because 4 points is basically Chris Wood scoring 1 goal. Yeah. So it's kind of like, why not just wait this week? Ahmad could do something. Like Man United love turning up against Liverpool. You could see them scoring. They had glimpses in the game against Newcastle. Granted, they were absolutely dreadful, but they had glimpses of scoring goals. And I think Amorim will want a response after losing 2-0 at home to Newcastle, given how bad Newcastle's form at Old Trafford have been over the years. With a midfield of Eriksen and Casemiro, something's definitely going to have to change. And I think the players will come out with a bit more fight, hopefully, against Liverpool for Man United fans. So I don't hate just rolling this transfer this week and just running with it, because I think Jackson will start this week, given how he came on as a sub and they lost 2-0. He'll start against Palace, and I can see Chelsea doing quite well there. So maybe we just run 4 at the back this week, roll the transfer, and have 2 next week with more information. And that's kind of suited us quite well over the last few game weeks playing it safer.
Yeah, I mean, again, it sucks because if Ahmad blanks, which he's probably going to against Liverpool, let's just be honest, then we have a scenario where we pretty much have to take him out. And I don't hate the rest of the defense. Like, again, most game weeks we want to start 4 defense, no. But I do think there's a world where this could still be all right because I don't think Chelsea's going to play as bad defensively as they did this past week. Leicester's a great matchup, and we know how great Lewis Hall's been. So I think this could actually work out for us pretty well. And the fact that we're saving the transfer is good. And then we'll have Rodgers back next week, and we should be good to go. And we kind of make some moves with that. And if Jackson blanks again, he's gone. Like, let's be honest. If he blanks again, he's gone. And that's fine, right? So if he blanks again and Ahmad blanks again, we can make that double transfer and be all good with no issues. So I think we just roll with this, and I like it going forward. Tom, is there anybody you wanted to talk about before we get out of here? I think the team is set. We got the captain selected in Mo Salah once again. You talked about Erling Haaland as another option. Again, I wouldn't do it, but it is an option for sure. And I wanted to ask you, actually, since we didn't mention it at all, would you consider captaining Isak as your differential? Because that's probably the true differential right now. With how bad Tottenham's been defensively with all their injuries, he's probably the guy you'd rather bet on as the differential captain. But I still think I'm going with Mo Salah in my team and definitely in the pod team as well.
Yeah, I actually love Isak as a captain differential. For the last 2 or 3 game weeks, I've kind of said it. And he scored, in his last 5 games? So I wouldn't bet against him scoring again. I just think Salah will score more points than Isak, probably. Like
every week, right?
Yeah, so I'd just go with Salah. If you want to be different, Haaland or Isak, but probably best to play it safe with the Egyptian king this week. But yeah, no, it was a great week. Nice to be back from Christmas, New Year. Hope everyone's had a good time. And great chatting with you again, JRich.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Hope you got some valuable insights heading into game week 20. Salah captain, Isak as your differential, and we gave you some midfield and defensive targets as well for you for not just this week, but the following weeks as well. So thank you much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe for all of our future content, and we'll see you guys next week. We're out. Peace.